Hi, everybody. Chag Sameach. I'm Rabbi Allison Poirier. I'm a colleague of Rabbi Adams from Hebrew College, but you might also know me as the granddaughter of your friend and neighbor, Thelma Sandberg. So I'm very excited to be joining you today and sharing a few words of Torah with you. In preparation for Pesach, I thought we should talk about the structure of the Seder. And I should also say this is my first time using this technology, so I hope you'll forgive me if I don't get it exactly right, but I'm excited to be here. So, like I said, in preparation for Pesach, I thought we should talk about the structure of the Seder. And I know that a lot of us will have Seders that are different from what we're used to this year, either virtually or by ourselves, or we might just not be able to do anything this year, and that's okay. We'll look forward to what comes after this epidemic has passed. But perhaps in the meantime, some of this learning will bring us the spirit and the joy of Passover that we would otherwise miss. So, of course, you know that rabbi means teacher. And in addition to being a rabbi, I also have a degree in education, and I love to talk about learning and teaching. And that's why the Seder is one of my favorite Jewish rituals, because the ritual is designed to teach us about itself. The whole Seder is designed to answer the question, why do we have a Seder? And it does this with 4 sets of 4 important things. We have 4 words for redemption from Egypt, 4 cups of wine, 4 children, and 4 questions. Can you think of any other significant fours? I immediately think of the 4 matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel, and the 4 seasons. In Jewish mystical traditions, there are also 4 ways of knowing and experiencing the world. So 4 is such a significant Jewish number, it's no wonder that the Seder fixates on it and uses it to structure the whole ritual. So today we'll take a closer look at each of the significant fours in the Seder. The rabbis decided the Seder should have 4 parts, 4 cups of wine, because of the 4 distinct words for redemption that God uses when promising to take us out of Egypt. The key verses are in Exodus chapter 6, verses 6 and 7. And in the scene just before these verses, Moses has visited Pharaoh for the first time and has been laughed out of the palace. And he returns to God and he's very frustrated. And he says, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to happen. We're like, why are you sending me here? But God reassures him and said, this is going to happen. I promise you. And I want to reassure you. And I want you to reassure the children of Israel by telling them this. You should tell them, Lachen, emor livnei Yisrael, ani Hashem, v'hotzeti etchem mitachat sivlut Mitzrayim, v'hitzalti etchem me'avodatam, v'ga'alti etchem bizroa netuya uvishvatayim gdolim, v'lakachti etchem li la'am, v'hayiti lachem lelohim, v'datem ki ani Hashem Elokecha, hamotzi etchem mitachat sivlut Mitzrayim. God says, therefore, reassure the children of Israel. Tell them, I am the Lord, and I will take you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will save you from their labor. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments, and I will take you to me as a people. And I will be God to you, and you will know that I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. So I know in English it says take twice, but in Hebrew it's 2 different words. The 4 words are hotzeti, hitzalti, ga'alti, lakachti. I will take you, I will save you, I will redeem you, and I will take you, but it's a different verb in Hebrew. And these 4 words of redemption led the ancient rabbis to conclude that the Seder should have 4 parts, one to honor each of the different ways that God saved us. And because you can't have a celebration without wine, they said, 4 parts, 4 cups of wine. This will be perfect. And we learn more about this in the Mishnah. So this is what it tells us. The Mishnah is trying to explain what you should do when you're having a Seder. It says, first, mix the first cup. The house of Shammai says, bless the day and then the wine. The house of Hillel says, bless the wine and then the day. So this is the part where we open up the Seder. This is the first Kiddush for the first time. This is the first thing we do. If you ever sing the song of the order of the Seder, the first thing you say is Kadesh. This is that, Kadesh. We say Kiddush for the first part. Okay, then we go along, we do a couple other things, right? And then they mix the second cup. And here, the child asks his parent, or if the child doesn't know, the parents just teach them how this night is different from all other nights. So we've done a few of the things, we've eaten some of the symbolic foods, right? And we get to the part now where we tell the story and ask the 4 questions, right? And so this is our second occasion to say a blessing. Then we have my favorite part, the meal. Then they mix for him a 3rd cup, and he blesses his food. This is a tradition we have when we say Birkat Hamazon, when we say grace after meals. Sometimes we have a tradition where we actually pour a new cup of wine and we say a blessing over that wine and the meal we just ate. So this is a festive meal, and we do this kind of blessing after the meal. And then on the 4th, he finishes Hallel, and he says on Hallel a blessing of song. Right? So the Seder ends when we pour a 4th cup of wine and we say Hallel. Hallel is that collection of poems and songs and praise. We say it on lots of festivals, and we also say a special version of that at the Seder. And we say it with a full cup of wine, because by then, if we're going to sing, we might need a little extra help. So you can see that every segment of the Seder is accompanied by a signpost cup of wine. And each cup of wine has a blessing that marks a different important point in the meal, and it gives us something to look forward to if we're getting a little antsy. So now, some of you might be thinking, wait, there's a 5th cup of wine. You haven't talked about it yet. This is the cup of Elijah. Elijah, of course, is the prophet we invite into our homes at the end of the Seder each year. And we want him to come because his arrival signifies the impending arrival of the Messiah. The first 4 cups of wine go along with the 4 words of redemption that I mentioned at the beginning. And there's this beautiful midrash. There's a beautiful rabbinic interpretation that ties Elijah's cup to the next verse in that same chapter, where God promises, Heveti etchem el haaretz, I will bring you to the land of Israel. And in that verse, the Israelites look forward to something that to them seems impossibly far in the future. We know that it comes true in just 40 years, but really they had no idea. It just seemed so distant, so far in the future, they couldn't even imagine it. And here we do the same thing. We welcome Elijah to bring eternal world peace, which seems terribly far in the future if it's coming at all. But we look forward and we hope for it anyway, just like our ancestors looked forward to returning to the promised land. So we bring this 5th cup of wine with this 5th language of future redemption. Now, as we drink these 4 cups of wine, we are obligated to tell the story of Passover to our 4 children, who respond with 4 questions. And we learn this from a verse in Exodus chapter 12. It tells us, V'haya ki yomru aleichem b'neichem ma ha'avodah hazot lachem. It will come to pass that your children will say to you, what's this? Ve'amartem zevach pesach hu l'Hashem asher pasach al batei v'nei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim v'nagfo et Mitzrayim v'et batenu hitzil v'yikod ha'am v'yishtachavu. Will come to pass, your children will say to you, what's this? And you will tell them, it is a Pesach sacrifice to God, because God passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when God smote the Egyptians, and God saved our houses. So from this verse, we know we are supposed to tell the story to our children. And it's interesting which part of the story we're specifically supposed to tell. we're specifically supposed to talk about the 10th plague and the miracle of the 10th plague that finally works after this terrible, terrible thing that God does to the Egyptians, but not to us, and we leave Egypt. And the rabbis who originally constructed the Seder knew that there would be different types of children who would need to hear the story in different ways to understand it. And they wanted to include all the children, right? It will come to pass that your children, all of them, will say this to you, and you have to teach all of them the Passover story. And we're going to have to figure out how to tell it to each child so that it resonates, so that they understand. So we have four archetypal children: the wise, the wicked, the simple, and the one who doesn't know how to ask. I've had some pretty funny conversations with my friends and my family about which of the children we think we are and which of the children we think the other people are. And we often disagree about ourselves and each other. And we really disagree about which child is the ideal one to be, because throughout generations, there have been many, many different interpretations about them. So, of course, traditionally, at first glance, we see the wise child as the ideal. Who wouldn't want to be the smarty, right? He asks, what are all the rules and customs for celebrating Passover? And the parents, they're so proud. They kvel, they answer him in great detail. He's so smart, he's so curious. The parents tell him all the things, all the details. They get to go on and on and on. And they answer him in a way that, like, come on, it shows that he's really the favorite kid, right? But to be honest, I think he's kind of a smart aleck and he's kind of a suck up. Like, I don't think he's the ideal one to be. And then we see the wicked child. And we're supposed to see him as, wicked, right? And he asks, what are all of these traditions to you? And the traditional response is to notice that he says, what are these to you, not to me? Because I don't believe it. I'm not included. I don't want to participate. And the traditional response is to dish it right back to him, is to say, you wouldn't have been redeemed with us if you were in Egypt, because you're so wicked, because you're not being part of the community, because you're not being part of this family. You don't include yourself in the group. Guess what? You wouldn't have been part of the group that was saved from Egypt. But I think this is really unfair because this is a child. It's a really harsh response for a child, even a child who's being malicious. But I don't think he's even being that poorly behaved, right? He raises a good point. He asks, "What's this? I don't know what's going on. Why are you doing this?" And he's just a kid and he doesn't understand them yet. So how could he include himself? How could he include himself and say, why are we doing this? Why are these meaningful to us? If he doesn't even understand them yet. He's asking and he's looking for a way in. And I think that his parents' response here isn't great. I think that instead, it would be a lot better to give him a response that makes him want to be part of the group. And then we have the simple child and the child who doesn't know how to ask. And they get similar responses. Sometimes we think the simple child is just kind of not with it, and the child who doesn't know how to ask is supposed to be seen as a young child, right? Who doesn't speak yet or who doesn't understand yet. But basically, they get the same answer. Basically, the parents quote them the verse from Exodus that I just read to you that says what we're supposed to tell our children. So they say, oh, we were redeemed from Egypt. We were slaves. There's a miracle. God brought us out. And I have mixed feelings about this one. On the one hand, it's good to give children just a little bit of information at a time and to keep them coming back with more and more as they mature and they can understand better, right? So hopefully you escalate from the child who doesn't know how to ask to, I don't know, like a medium wise child and then a wiser child and then a wiser child, right? And you keep telling them more and more information. But on the other hand, it's important not to belittle or underestimate children either. The parents who just kind of quote the verse from Exodus think, all right, I did what I was supposed to do. I read the verse from the Torah. I told it to the kid. I'm good. I'm done. We fulfilled our obligation. And they sort of wipe their hands of the whole situation. And perhaps they do their children a little bit of a disservice by not encouraging them to learn more. So as we continue, I invite you to consider how you see each of these archetypal children. If you were writing the Haggadah, how would you suggest that we answer each child? So as you think about that, we'll focus on the fourth four, because in addition to their questions, we imagine each of the four children asking us the four questions. And when you read them, you realize, of course, that the four questions are in fact one question with four answers. Why is this night different from all other nights? That's the question. Because on this night, we eat matzah, eat maror, dip our vegetable, and recline. The implication is that we also ask why we do each of these things, and that's how we refer to this part of the Seder as the four questions. And so, of course, we say we eat matzah because we were escaping from Egypt and we didn't have time to break our bread, or because this was the poor quality of bread that we had in Egypt, and because this is what God tells us to do as part of the Pesach celebration each year, is to eat unleavened bread. We eat maror because, again, in the verse that talks about the Passover sacrifice, God says you should eat it with matzah and maror. And the bitterness reminds us of the tears. In fact, sometimes it physically evokes in us tears that stream down our face from that grain, from that horseradish. It reminds us of the bitterness of slavery. Dipping the vegetable, so interesting. We take a symbol of springtime, right? This leafy green vegetable that reminds us of spring and new life and renewal. And even as we're eating this hopeful thing, we remember by dipping it in the salt water, we remember where it came from. We remember sort of the sweetness that we have now, thanks to the hardship that we went through before. And then we recline because we're so thankful for our freedom, so thankful to have this luxury. And if you look at the context in which the Seder originally came about, you see that these are also evocative of certain luxuries or wealth or sort of high class things that happened in the sort of larger Roman Empire that the Mishnah and the original Seder were written in. So it was very classy to recline. It was not classy to dip your vegetables twice, right? But it was sort of a countercultural thing that we did just on the night of the Seder. And then the matzah and the maror because of what's in the Torah. So, by the time we're done answering the four questions, we've mentioned all the symbolic foods and told the whole story, right? That's what I said at the beginning. It's set up to tell you about itself, right? We have the four questions, and by answering each of the questions, we tell an important part of the story. We tell about our affliction and our escape, the bitterness, but the renewal and the freedom that we have now. And so we come to the best part of the Seder. We come to the meal. Excuse me. So I know that this year, this is the part of the Seder that might be hardest for a lot of us. We can open the Haggadah and we can read it to ourselves. We can learn, we can say the four questions, even if we're by ourselves, which I encourage you to do if that's meaningful for you. But nobody likes to eat dinner alone, right? And especially at Passover, I think a lot of us have these memories of special foods, perhaps that we associate with special loved ones. And so when we get to this part of the meal, we might not get to eat those foods. And we might not get to share that with the people whose company we enjoy. And this is a real sadness. And just like we normally end the Seder by saying next year in Jerusalem, I think that this year we have a real immediate, a real tangible feeling in our gut about next year. Next year, our Seder will be better. We'll be maybe in Jerusalem or maybe out of our rooms, out of our apartments. We'll be with loved ones. We'll be healthy. We'll be out of this quarantine. And we're experiencing a real limit on our freedom now that we hope next year we won't. So I hope that even in this hard time, you're able to find moments of sweetness. And I'll leave you with a new set of 4 questions that I've written and that I hope are meaningful to you. So let me find them to share with you. Okay, here we go. 4 questions for Passover in quarantine. How is this Passover different from all others? On all other Passovers, we wash our hands twice in a bowl of cool water, once without a blessing. This year we wash with soap and hot water, and we may even say a blessing twice to remind ourselves of the importance of this task. On all other Passovers, we gather with many friends and family. This year, we gather virtually or in small groups or not at all to protect each other's health. On all other Passovers, we talk about 10 plagues that happened long ago. This year, we are also experiencing an 11th plague that has upended our routines and put many lives in danger. On all other Passovers, we recline to demonstrate how relaxed and free we are during this holiday. This year, many of us have already been at home for many weeks, and we are bored, tired, anxious, and irritated. But we will still recline to show our appreciation for the freedoms we do have and for the relief we look forward to when this plague passes. I wish you a Zisen Pesach, a sweet Pesach, and I hope to see many of you in person soon, when this plague is behind us. Thank you so much. Chag Sameach.